Thanks for tuning into Spirit of Harmony. I'm your host, John Morton, and welcome to our first one-on-one discussion-based episode of this podcast. We have a dear friend of mine with us today on the show, Mr. Andrew Kaveler. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, happy to be here, John.
Excellent. Well, before we dive into the discussion of today's song, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about your background, specifically the role that music has played in your life and how that's grown and evolved as you've navigated life as a whole.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so my name is Andrew Kaveler, like you said. Also like John, I'm native to North Carolina. Him and I met first while going to NC State, go Pack. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, and I have been working in that field ever since, so about 6 years now. And then a few months ago, I got my professional engineering license. Outside of work, I volunteer in high school ministry at church. Other hobbies are filmmaking and writing, which I think music videos is going to be another episode in itself.
I know we have that on the back burner for sure. We have collaborated on two music videos together for some original material of mine. The first one being a song that I put out in 2019 called 2,000 Isles. After that, in 2023, I put out a full-length album called Ascension. Andrew and I put together a music video for that that wove several of the songs on that album into one cohesive narrative, 8 of the 11 songs altogether. We put that short film out to accompany the album, complement it, early last year in 2023. So those are the two major projects that we've worked on to date, and now we continue to cultivate our creative friendship through this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in terms of music, always. So, my parents were generally into music, so it was always playing in the house. My first real memory, though, was on car trips. So, it used to be like just sing-alongs, like for kids, because me. But then eventually they exposed me to more of their music, which include a lot of musicals. The main two that always come to mind is Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera. So those two have been, saturated into my brain permanently, which is good. Les Mis is my favorite musical, so definitely started there. And then in middle school through high school and even part of college, I was in band. I think we discussed that. I played clarinet, learned tenor sax as well, and then while in college, I sang in church choir for a few years. And at this point, just kind of a music enthusiast, you could say, but it's obviously all that bass work is still there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember being in CCM together. One of the first. Probably the first time I really extensively interacted with you was in the fall of 2016. We were both small group leaders for Catholic Campus Ministry at NC State. And at the beginning of that particular semester, we went on a retreat. It was a camping retreat for small group leaders. And two members of the ministry had bought acoustic guitars. And I'm assuming it was with the intent of leading us in praise and worship music. And early in the evening, once they had brought out their guitars, they started playing the song Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, and I started singing along to that. And that ultimately set the course for what we actually did perform that evening. We went through a songbook, playing other popular songs such as American Pie, This Land Is Your Land. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, Wagon Wheel. It's turned into this major sing-along. Actually other campers elsewhere in the site could hear us and joined us in as well. And it was during that time that, again, Andrew and I got to know each other a little bit better, and we both learned that we did marching band in high school. I was as I mentioned in the first episode, I was in the pit crew doing auxiliary percussion. So that was something that we quickly bonded over, and it's just continued to grow from there.
Yeah.
So on that note, let's get into today's song. Today we are going to be discussing a song that piqued my interest even before I actually gave it a spin. I read the lyrics first, and the message it conveys is one that I believe can resonate in any listener's life, be it in a musical or spiritual sense, which is fitting as the song is of the Christian rock genre. The band is Thousand Foot Crutch, and the song is Favorite Disease. The song was first released in 2007 on the band's album The Flame and All of Us. Lyrically, the song finds its protagonist longing to be a part of something that enhances his life. He contemplates a series of options presented to him that offer up solutions of varying quality in his search for meaning. Wanting, watching, debating on which way to run to. Haunted, voices, craving someone to run to. I haven't lost myself in a long time. I never tried to care when I wanted to. I just wanted to be part of something. I just want to be real like you. The entity that he ultimately finds himself clinging to is one that he has a fickle relationship with, as he conveys in the chorus. Sometimes I feel like a monster, and times I feel like a saint. I'm on my knees. You're my favorite disease. Continuing through the song, this thing proves to sometimes be a deadly distraction in his life. Silent warnings tell me that I've let things come undone. But on other occasions, it's something that he is able to lose himself in a more pleasant manner. It's something that he turns to for wisdom and guidance. Show me, teach me the way to heaven, because no other way can. I haven't lost myself in a long time. As the track reaches its bridge, he becomes increasingly dependent on it for sustenance. Closer, closer, closer to you. I need to be closer. I have closure and get closer to you every step I take. In the end, the protagonist fully embraces the good and bad that the entity brings into his life. I love the way you kill me. Love the way you heal me. Lead singer and songwriter Trevor McNevin discussed his inspiration behind the track in the album's liner notes, explaining that the titular disease for him is music, and that it demonstrates an ability to get in the way of his relationship with God, his wife, and his friends. Okay, so that's my discussion of the song. So with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and go through some of the questions that I've come up with, so Andrew can discuss his own experience with the song over the course of his life. So first thing that I must ask, Andrew, do you remember the first time you heard this particular song, and what was your reaction to it?
So, not exactly. So, a little background, just kind of my history with the band. So, my first exposure was to a later album of theirs called The End Is Where We Begin, which came out in 2012, I think. So, at that time, I was still using iTunes, and if you remember iTunes, they give you like the little 15-second or 30-second like sample of each song. And
yeah.
So I did that. I liked them, and so on an impulse, I kind of bought the whole album and I got hooked by it. Like, it was a great investment. And so then, of course, I started listening to older music, and I came across, the Flame in All of Us. And my first reaction is just this song is very strange. Like, it's very different, So, and then eventually, I watched a musical, which just added more questions than answers. Did you watch the music video, by the way?
Yeah. So for those who may have not seen it, the music video for the song finds the band in a battlefield in the midst of combat. I'm trying to think.
Right. I'm not sure if it might be World War II.
Yeah.
Or maybe Vietnam, something like that. But yeah, so it adds even more layers to a song that's already got a lot going on in it. But yeah, it was one of those ones that just kind of, caught my attention just because it was so odd. And so, of course, I listened to it more times. I'm like, oh, wow, like, I relate to this a lot.
Yeah.
Like, too much almost. Yeah, so... And yeah, we can get more into the depths of that later. But yeah, that was my initial thoughts, just kind of how it hooked me.
Yeah, and it was interesting, too, going from, just reading the lyrics of the song and not only listening to the song, but watching the video at the same time and seeing this historical context put into it as well. Mm-hmm. Especially with it being, Christian rock. I anticipated something a little more probably contemporary. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure that that's... having that historical element makes it more appealing to part of the audience who are more into, history as well.
Right. Well, I think they chose that because it's more of a life and death situation that makes more sense rather than just, a guy sitting in his room, like, seemingly talking to nothing.
Yeah.
So, like, and I think that the way the music video plays out, for those who haven't seen it, it's like, is it 3 or 4 of them? I think it's like 4 people in the squad.
Yeah.
And, like, the leader, who I'm assuming is Trevor, like, decides to go one way, and then, like, his buddy gets shot. And then there's, like, some stuff in the middle where he's, like, regretting all that, and then it kind of, like, jumps back in time to that decision moment, and he decides to go the other way, and I think he gets killed instead.
Yeah.
And so that kind of ties in with, making, there's, like, all these choices and regretting past decisions. And it's, like, putting it in a way I think more people connect to, even if they have not been in a war. Mm-hmm. Just, like, we can all understand, like, broadly speaking, like, life and death and how a seemingly innocent or minute choice can have like lasting consequences for ourselves and others.
Yeah. And again, if it is in, well, I guess if it's either Vietnam or World War II, I mean, it's catastrophic for more people than we even realize.
Right, yeah.
So continuing, what would you say are the compositional or production or performance aspects of the song that move you the most? I know you listened to the song a couple of times in a row, and you found yourself revisiting it, looking for other things that stood out to you. I know that's something that I find when I hear a song. Sometimes I'll listen to it several times in a row in the same sitting, wanting to take in and dissect different portions of it, look for things that I didn't notice before in the music, or try to figure out the literal or metaphorical ideas presented in the lyrics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, for me the main thing was definitely the words and the themes going on. To be honest, technically it's kind of mid-tier. I don't know if that's the right word for it. Like, it doesn't, like, it's not bad, but it's not impressive. It's not exactly catchy. It's not something you're going to hum in the car or in the shower or as you're vacuuming the house or something. Mm-hmm. So, like, the real value of it comes from the themes. Like, what about for you? Like, what did you think, like, just musically, technically, like, what was your impression, like, as a musician?
I think the contemporary sound of it, as far as like almost the mainstream rock sound to it, was what piqued my interest. I think I was, we can touch on this a little bit later, but I think as far as Christian music goes, I tend to believe that like the general public, when they think or hear just, Christian music, the phrase itself, there's a tendency to imagine groups like New Song or Casting Crowns, these bands that are, successful enough to fill up arenas with this sort of anthemic, pop sounding stuff. Almost like Coldplay is the first artist that comes to mind. I think quite a bit of comparisons are drawn there. So it was interesting to hear something that, like, to me, this song sounds like something that could almost be played alongside Foo Fighters, for example. There's that sort of
it kind of fits into that same kind of tone, like, comfortably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was particularly interesting to me. I can hear it being played on some of the local rock-centric stations, maybe not amongst like the oldie stuff specific. It's not Led Zeppelin as far as like almost gravitating towards metal specifically,
right?
But it does sound very reminiscent of some of the more popular rock bands. Not that there are too many of them in this current era, unfortunately. Hence why Foo Fighters comes to mind. There's that same angst, that same edge to it that feels very reminiscent, very familiar to me in that sense. So, from a musical side, I was able to appreciate that from the get-go. All right, so continuing on, how would you say, I know you mentioned listening to their 2012 album first and then going back and digging into their discography. How would you say that your relationship with Favorite Disease and with Thousand Foot Crutch has evolved with time? How your fandom has evolved? What's
weird is it hasn't much. Like, it kind of stagnated really quickly. So obviously, like I said, I went back, listened to their older stuff, because at the time, The End Is Where They Begin The End Is Where We Begin was like their current album. Like, that was the latest. So it was like, go back, listen to all the old stuff. Okay, like some of it not so much. But then the two original albums after that just didn't hit the same way. I don't know if you looked into any of them, but it's Inhale and Exhale, which are fine, and there's definitely some songs in them I really liked. Untraveled Road is real good. But, like, I never fell in love with it, the same way I did with that 2012 album or with Favorite Disease.
Yeah.
So a couple times I looked at, trying to see them live in concert. I don't think they were ever near North Carolina at all. So, but if they do, I'd still love to go, because they strike me as one of those bands that'd be really good to see live.
Yeah.
I mean, as you can vouch, like some artists, like it's hit and miss. Like, some of them are really good. Some of them are just like, oh gosh, why did I do this?
Right. That calls to mind actually one of the shows that I have coming up in a couple weeks. At the time of recording this is July of 2024. I'm going to see in 2 weeks a band called Two Door Cinema Club who are from Ireland. A band that I've had on my bucket list for over a decade. I first heard them in 2011. I was actually telling Eileen is a friend of ours. Hopefully she'll appreciate getting the shout out in this episode. Yep. I was telling her the other day about the first time I ever listened to them. I told her like the whole distinct story. Hopefully she appreciated me going in as depth as I did, because I remember it so vividly. But it was hearing their song "What You Know," which to date is still their best known song, on the VH1 Top 20 Video Countdown. It was the first morning of spring break in my freshman year of high school. They were the artist to watch that week. At the time, they only had their first album out, so I listened to that and fell in love with that. And I've listened to their subsequent albums that they've done since then. I think they have 5 or 6 now. But the main reason I'm going to see them in 2 weeks is because of the nostalgia that I cling to for that first album. Mm-hmm. Not to say that the stuff that they've done since then is bad, but it just doesn't quite resonate with me quite as much.
Right. It's like that was the high point, kind of.
Yeah. So, I appreciate the opportunity to finally see them. I've waited, like I said, over a decade to finally get them off my bucket list. But, it's maybe, I think, again, nostalgia does play a big factor in music, too. I mean, the music that we listen to in our upbringing tends to be what we carry with us as we go through life. There's a tendency to become a little more closed-minded about what we want to listen to or what new stuff we want to take in. Hopefully, for the listeners of this podcast, that'll encourage them to change that perspective a little bit. But I totally understand the tendency, like I said, to gravitate towards the earlier stuff, the stuff that you were exposed to earliest in life.
So or even another example for me is Les Miserables. So like, I grew up listening to the original cast recording, and like, that's what's ingrained in my head. And so it's like once I hear it that way, it's like, even though, it's technically the same song, it's the same music, it's not going to change that much, across the decades. But like, even the last time I saw it live, I was like, it just didn't hit the same way. Cause like, that person sings this part of the song a little bit different, or intones it this way, or has it's too emotional, or is not emotional enough in the way they sing it. So yeah, it's weird. I don't know. But I guess in some ways it's good. I guess it's almost inevitable. It's like, with movies, like, I don't know, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's like, it's ingrained, it kind of exists forever that way. Mm-hmm. It can't really change.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah,
that makes for an interesting contrast, the difference between, film and music. I mean, with film, film is more restrained to a particular time and place. Mm-hmm. Whereas with music, I mean, they have a catalog that they build over time that in order to sustain their career, they're a little more dependent on that, since they have to, go out and perform it live for an audience to maintain that audience. Whereas, with actors, you can jump from one project to another, and
there's not as much connection. Which, I guess there is some, but yeah, you're right. It's not as much solely them as it is with like a musical artist. Same with like even film directors and writers. Yeah, because it is such a team effort.
Now I want to go find a live performance of this song to see, how it differs from the studio.
Yeah.
Maybe if we're lucky, there's a video out there that demonstrates how their live performance of it has evolved over time. That's something I always enjoy looking up, especially with older artists. You can see how their presentation of it has changed, as either as their voices evolved or as they've just felt this need to experiment with different genres. Sometimes they'll take their songs and mold it to fit a particular genre.
Which I don't know if you saw, Thousand Foot Crutch is like re-releasing some of their songs, like they're redoing it. I don't know what the actual term for that is.
Like re-recording?
I guess, re-recording.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're doing that for The End Is Where They Begin, and like, I listened to a couple and it was like, it was fine. But like, I don't know, what do you think about that in general?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the circumstances. Sometimes if an artist is older, I remember Joni Mitchell actually did that with some of her earlier recordings. I think she went back and revisited, I don't know if it was a full album or just a selection of songs, but she went back and re-recorded some of her early work from the 60s and 70s. And this was in the late 90s when she recorded them and released an album of that. With that, with those recordings being 30 years apart, I think it makes for a more interesting endeavor, because you can hear how, like when they sing it, their relationship with the song has changed. Certain components of the lyrics certainly hit a little bit harder for them now that they've aged and gone through life and gained experience and wisdom, probably more so than they did when they were in their 20s. A little more naive, a little hungrier, just looking to find their place in the world.
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
So I didn't know that about Thousand Foot Crutch. That's another, that's something else I'll have to explore with them as well. It's interesting too when they actually do, sometimes when they do re-record it like that, because usually the only opportunity you have to see them reinterpret a piece of work in that way is if you go see them live.
See them live, yeah.
Most artists I find are less inclined to document, how they change the song on record like that. It's just, most likely, when they're in the studio, once it's, on tape, that's it, they're done. And anything they want to do with changing the arrangement is at their leisure to bring to the stage.
So I don't want to get us too off track, but this is on my mind that you're bringing that up. Have you ever listened to The Strike?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I don't know if they're considered indie. Like, they're not super well known, but like they have some pretty catchy songs. One of the things I've noticed them doing, at least on Spotify, is like whenever they release like a new single, like they'll include in like almost like a mini album. So it's like 5 songs. So it's like the one new song and then 4 of like songs they already had out that are just like really popular.
Oh, okay.
So they call it a single, but then they're like releasing this mini album with all these other songs, which just feels weird. I don't know.
Is it like the regular recordings of the songs?
Yeah, it's the same recordings and everything.
Okay.
So. And it makes even less sense for Spotify. It's not like if I was buying, a vinyl and it's like, oh, like here's 5 of our really popular songs. It's like, okay, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's on Spotify just feels weird.
I do remember seeing examples of that on iTunes when I was a kid. Sometimes, a song will be released as a single and they may have, an artist may include, 2 or 3 other songs from the album on there, which, again, being on a digital format like that, I'm not sure what would compel them to do that.
Right, it's like, what's the benefit to this?
Yeah.
Which it could be, maybe there's a physical CD and it's just copying that. That's the only thing I can think of, but I don't know, I guess you could think of it almost like, oh, here's a nice little mini playlist.
Yeah.
Just like, here's some good songs to listen to.
Yeah. I guess it's feasible, too, that in putting out releases like that, it boosts the sales of the individual songs. I think it probably worked a little more in the artist's favor, perhaps when, physical singles would be released, like, CDs like that with, the 4 or 5 songs on it.
Right.
Because that, up until...
Also, what's the max number of songs they can put on a vinyl? Do you know? Roughly?
I think it's... Like, on each side, it's between 20 and 25 minutes, typically.
Okay.
I think... At least it was, back in the 70s. That was generally the rule. I don't think it's really changed all that much.
Okay.
It is interesting because as albums have gotten longer, with CDs becoming... Well, like, I guess...
First to CDs and now to all digital. Yeah.
Right. And this was particularly noticeable in the 90s as CDs became the most popular means of consuming music, buying and consuming music. Artists felt pressure to cram as much as they could onto the 80 minutes that comprised a CD. And now, 30 years later, those albums are being released on vinyl, and now they have to, conjure up.
It. Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of times... Well, I don't know how frequent specifically, but in some cases, an album that was 50 minutes long, they have to put onto 2 vinyl discs, but they only put, the songs only fill up 3 of the sides. So you have, a full first disc, and then the second disc has the rest of the album on one side, and the other side is just blank.
Right. Oh.
So it's still happening even with albums that come out nowadays. Much to the frustration of buyers, because that second disc jacks up the price of a vinyl quite a bit.
Yeah, you want full bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Which would be cool. I don't know, they could maybe put like an interview or something on the other side. That'd be a good way to utilize it.
Yeah, that's true.
Or some kind of bonus material.
Yeah, because I know, bonus versions of albums are still quite common, sometimes on streaming services or, even on CDs. Like they'll sell them in certain stores like Best Buy or Target. Well, not Best Buy anymore. They don't sell CDs anymore.
Yeah.
They
don't sell any CDs at all?
Not anymore. I think they've mostly gotten rid of at least physical material of CDs for sure. They still sell Blu-rays of movies. Yeah, and video games. But music is completely gone.
Oh, wow.
well, CDs, I should clarify. They do still have a teeny tiny vinyl section, at least in the stores that I've been in recently.
So they have vinyl, but they don't have CDs.
Right. They'll just kind of stick them, usually in the back around where all the TVs are.
Yeah.
All right. And then continuing on to my last question, Andrew, what would you say is the key takeaway thematically or sonically that you'd like for listeners to get from Favorite Disease?
Yeah, let's dive right in. So the short takeaway for me was faith is messy. It's not glamorous. It's not pretty. Our relationship with God is not cushy. In some ways, it can feel like it's a disease where it's just saying, it's obviously not you, like, physically, but, like, it's very near you. It's almost part of you. And sometimes it can feel abusive. It's because, like, no matter how much we say otherwise, we expect our life to be comfortable. And for Christians especially, I think we get this idea that because we're faithful to God, our life will be more comfortable, it'll be more fruitful, and that somehow we'll be exempt from the hardship, and that's just not reality. I'm trying to think back to some of the stuff you said earlier where, like with the constant decision-making and how Trevor almost sounds like he's like second-guessing himself, where it's like, I'm being drawn to this, but is this just me like needing some kind of emotional fulfillment? And that's what the spiritual life is like. It's not just, yes, I believe and I'm good. Like I'm never going to question what I think or these little details of it. Yeah, and it reminds me, if you don't mind me bringing this up, like it reminds me of one of your songs that you did not release, Into the Breach.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very similar, where it's not, rhythmically, it's like not as typical. And so it's very ambiguous in some way and kind of ambivalent. And so it's not sure what it is. Like it's kind of like it's struggling. So it reminded me a lot of that in a good way. And I say that like listening to it again, 10 years later. 10 plus years later. And then lastly, the song really hits on, human nature. It kind of sounds alright, like how, externally and internally we can oscillate really quickly between, doing something good and doing something bad, having a high moment, having a low moment. I really love that particular line in the chorus. Sometimes I feel like a monster, other times I feel like a saint. Because, it's like, one day, I don't know, I do some really good thing and the next day I screw something. It's like, oh gosh, I'm a terrible person.
Right. Yeah, faith is fickle, and it's something that evolves over life. It ebbs and flows. There are seasons where, I find that I'm more invested. I'm more eager to learn and, engage.
Right.
And there are other times where I feel burned out, and it's harder to get into, any sort of growth or like feel motivated to continue to grow in prayer or in, or knowledge or evangelization.
Yeah.
So it's something that really it's a day by day process that you have to always be watchful and mindful of, because the tendency to become complacent or slip or go in the wrong direction is always present.
Yeah.
It's easy to be distracted, and I think the song perfectly captures that tendency to be distracted by things of this world. And it's interesting because thinking about music, music is arguably one of the most common ways that people evangelize. Thousand Foot Crutch, of course, have made a nice living off of that.
Right.
But obviously, in a more secular sense, music is not always used in such an effective manner. It's can be used at the expense of other people or to inspire hate or disdain.
Sure. Or even if the music is good, like it can be all consuming of you. Like I actually didn't know the stuff you were saying about Trevor, and like you're saying how you were saying like this is his relationship to music and how it can distract him from God and family and friends.
Right.
So it's like it can be the best Christian music in the world, but if it's like drawing you away from God, drawing you away from your family somehow, like then that's a problem, I guess. Like something needs to give there.
Yeah, I think by and large, the central message to me of Favorite Disease is that pleasure in meaning can be derived from a multitude of both spiritual and secular factors of our lives. Specifically discussing the secular, although things like music are as mentioned, a gift from God in our lives. At the end of the day, music alone can't fully sustain us. I think that's also an excellent point to bring up in a music discussion podcast.
Yes.
Bringing it up very early on in episode 2. We may turn to a song for comfort or joy or perspective on life, but it seldom gives us all the answers that we truly need. The lyrics we hear are one or a few individuals' points of view on a matter that is often specific to a distinct time, as universally as appealing as the message of a song may be. I find that it takes reciprocal relationships, whether it's with God, our loved ones, our brothers and sisters of this world, to fully see ourselves for who we are, and to fully realize our potential. A healthy lifestyle requires us to achieve balance and moderation in how we utilize everything as we go through life.
Right. Cool. Is it my turn now?
I think this is a good time to go to...
Yeah. So I had a question for you, John. I mean, kind of for me as well, but mainly for you. So,
okay.
What defines something as Christian music? What is that threshold? Like, is it if someone just says the word God or alludes to God, is it now Christian music? Or, what's that line? So kind of some background on this. I think most of the listeners probably know, like, Christian music in the modern sense. So, like, the Hillsong, Casting Crowns, like, it can be very hit and miss. Like, it doesn't always have a reputation as being good music.
Right.
And some of it, I think, does tend to try too hard, especially when you get into, like, Christian rock or Christian metal. Like, did you grow up with Skillet? Did you listen to Skillet growing up?
A little bit.
So, like, I enjoy Skillet, but, like, I can't help but feel like you can tell they're trying a little too hard to, like, hook the teenagers onto Christ and stuff like that. Whereas, and I'll get more into it. We can get more into this, but, like, I feel like Thousand Foot Crutch always felt more organic in the way they did it.
Yeah.
So, like, for you, what's kind of that line? Like, how would you approach that?
Well, when you asked me that question a couple of days ago, I went looking online just to see what perspectives I could find, and I found a website called NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com, and they bring up 3 different components that they believe make a good Christian song: heart, art, and doctrine. As far as art goes, they emphasize the importance of sincerity in what you do. They say, a listener can sniff out someone who is insincere about their relationship with God. So that's, the first thing that they touch on. The second is art, which is simply just the discipline that you have as an artist to take the time to invest in growing your own craft. And as far as putting something together like a Christian song, putting in the time, the attention to detail, and the discipline to ensure that the work is the absolute best it can be.
Yeah, it's not like just a pastor who picks up a guitar and is like, oh, I'm a Christian musician now.
Yeah. Exactly. Or some of the drummer, the priest that I've seen drumming at special events that I've sent reels of to you on Instagram. The third, and in my opinion, the most important factor is doctrine. It does tie in a little bit to the art, portion of that, as far as taking the time and the discipline to ensure the work is as good as possible. In your work, you want to convey, a full understanding of everything that God entails, all of His attributes, who He is and what He represents. You want to, to represent or demonstrate that He is, sovereign, jealous, loving. I mean, everything. Well, depending on the subject matter of the song, you may not
can't cover everything,
right? But depending on the circumstance, if you're telling a story in a song or if you're just discussing a particular subject, you want to bring forth, everything that He entails, or whatever attribute you want to describe in a song, in a concrete and accurate manner. Because that way it makes the conversion process for someone who may not be, Christian, a little bit easier for them. Again, I think that's something that Thousand Foot Crutch really succeeds in. Because to me, listening to a song like Favorite Disease, the message of that song isn't crammed down the listener's throats in a way that someone may, like Skillet may be guilty of. To me, the message is gently massaged into the listener's psyche. Right. So I think, this song, again, just from the first time I heard it, I thought it was, it was very well put together as far as that, as far as the heart and art and doctrine go. I think
a good indicator is like someone who's not necessarily a Christian could probably be caught like listening to it and like not realizing like it's secretly Christian music.
Right.
Which I think is a good indicator. Like even I was on a car trip, one of my friends, I had him listen to it and he's like, he couldn't quite see the Christianity in it. So, which I think is, in a roundabout way, kind of a good sign. Like, it is that subtle enough. Like, you have to actually pay attention and kind of read between the lines.
Right.
Yeah.
There are some classic rock artists that I've noticed have done that. That's always piqued my interest when, when a lot of those legacy artists that I love, instill Christian messages into their songs, or like biblical references. U2 are the first artists that come to mind as far as that goes. Okay. I should say. That was funny because I remember in 2016 it was a separate gathering that we were at. It was a bonfire a couple months after that camping trip, and I remember you saying that you just couldn't understand the appeal of U2.
Yeah, I still can't. Sorry, John. Maybe I need to. It's been a long time. Maybe I need to give him another go.
Yeah, I don't know if I had promised I would make a playlist at the time, or if you would ask me to, but that's 8 years later. I still haven't done it. You still haven't found what you're looking for. I
have not. Not in U2, at least.
But again, I listened to some of their work, and I feel I get that same impression from them. It's funny. Probably the best example, and I'll try to make this point quickly. One of the best examples in their catalog is a song called 40. It was the last song on an album they put out in 1983 called War. That album touched on a lot of the political and socioeconomic tension that U2 had grown up with in Ireland. And they had 9 songs on the album, and they wanted 10 to just to make the album feel complete to them. They wanted something that was sort of a gentle closer to the album. And they were in the studio on the last day. They had already run over their schedule. The next band that was to be in the studio recording was banging on the door, wanting to be let in. And Adam Clayton, the bass player, had already gone home. He thought they were done. So it was just Bono, and who's the lead singer of U2, The Edge, the guitarist, and Larry Mullen Jr., their drummer. And Bono he had a Bible with him, and he flipped it open, and the page that it landed on had Psalm 40 on it. And so he just looked at the first couple of verses, and the three of them improvised a song around the first couple of verses. They wrote the song in about 10 minutes, recorded it in about 10 minutes, and I think they said they mixed and mastered it in about 20 minutes. So the whole thing was done in 40 minutes, and the song was titled 40. And the verses, the 2 verses of the song are just almost word for word the first couple of verses of Psalm 40, and then the chorus is just, the refrain is how long to sing this song. And for many years after that album came out, they used that song to close their concerts. So it was almost a praise and worship moment, and interestingly enough, people would walk out of the arena after the show singing, how long to sing this song. It is funny to think how many people may have not even realized that at its heart it was a Christian song.
Sure.
So I think I consider them masters at the craft of mixing heart, art, and doctrine.
So then, follow-up question: what makes someone a Christian artist or not? So I don't think of U2 as a Christian artist, even if some of their songs are specifically Christian.
Right.
And then, in regard to your most recent album, Ascension, there are definitely songs in that are way more Christian, way more spiritual than the other songs.
Right.
So how do you think of yourself? Are you a Christian artist, or are you just a Christian who happens to be an artist?
I would gravitate towards the latter in the same way that I look at U2. I think my strategy as far as approaching my faith or integrating my faith into music is more based around the idea of gently massaging messages into my work. I think it also kind of, I think presenting my music in that way also represents sort of the fickle nature of faith, in how sometimes it's not the central aspect of my life. Sometimes there are conflicts that I don't want to bring to God. I want to try to figure out on my own, which isn't the best way to do it, of course. But I think that carries over well into my music, and even for people who I know like my music who aren't necessarily Christian, it gives them something to appreciate, and maybe if I'm lucky, they'll look into some of the more Christian-based stuff and it'll give them a conversion of heart.
Sure.
But yeah, that's, most bands like like U2 and even other artists that I can think of. Bruce Springsteen is somebody else who I know has integrated his, like, at least biblical references into his music. Bernie Taupin, Elton John's lyricist, does a similar thing.
Or there's the song Kyrie, like sung by Mr. Mister. You've definitely heard that one, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, most of those guys, I mean, as much as I love them, not Christians in my book.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's always an interesting thing to think about that. And same with that Kyrie song. It's like not to assume, like, I never get the impression otherwise that, like, they're strong, ardent Christians. But it does, it makes you think it just kind of how, I guess it always is kind of in the back of people's minds, like, even for people who don't go to church, like, many of them do still believe in a God, like, in some form or other. And so it definitely shines through in, like, those moments and those illusions.
Yeah. All right.
Well, that's about all I got. Any closing thoughts, remarks?
No, I think that covers everything really well. This was a fantastic discussion of this song. It also provides a good template for how these discussions can go. I appreciate you bringing that last question, or actually the last two questions technically, into the fold. That's something I'm definitely going to encourage other visitors to integrate in the discussion going forward. So, Andrew, thank you so much again for your time on here. I really appreciate you being on here and being the first, sort of being the guinea pig for these sorts of discussions.
No, it was really fun. Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. And to all the listeners out there, thank you so much as always for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and be on the lookout for other new content coming forward in the future. Until then, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.